War. War games. War games with propaganda, guns, zombies, and other things. This is Call of Duty Thrack Ops. Reporting for duty. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Call of Duty Thrack Ops. I hope you, your family, your friends, and even your pets are doing well. Everybody's doing great over here. Thank you for asking. I do apologize for the bit of a delay on this episode. There was quite a bit of behind-the-scenes kerfuffles, is the word I'm going to use, that kind of prevented this one from getting out a little sooner than it should have been. I do apologize, but we are here now. And this is actually the first episode, not to date it too much, but this is the first one where we have seen the next installment get announced in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, being developed by Infinity Ward. It had been in the rumor mill for a while that was the next game they were working on. We have now seen it. There's been a couple different trailers shown, and they've talked about some of the other modes. And I do have some thoughts out the gate, but I will save those for the eventual episode because we have a dozen more Call of Duty games to get to before we get to that one. So just bear with me on that one. I'm hoping to get that one out relatively quickly, but it doesn't matter. We're here now, and we are here talking about Call of Duty Black Ops 3. It was so nice they did it thrice, right? So this is the 12th game in the Call of Duty franchise. This one released November 6th, 2015 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and I believe this is the last Call of Duty game developed for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. So truly an end of an era. Even though we've already moved on to the next-gen consoles, they were still kind of hanging on for a little bit. And this one, that PS3 360 version of Black Ops 3, it's quite a feature-limited version. It was developed by Beanox, and it only has the multiplayer modes. There are a couple videos on YouTube going more into detail, but there's a reason people do not remember those at all, basically. And yeah, this is the first one. This is the first new one for Treyarch in the next gen, coming off of Black Ops 2 quite a few years ago. That was a big success, so they're like, you know what, fuck it, we're just gonna keep doing Black Ops. And well, let's just say the results here are rather interesting. Like right off the bat, is this as good as Black Ops 1 or Black Ops 2? No. Not at all. It suffers quite a bit from some interesting game design choices they make, particularly in the campaign. This is like the moment where it feels like the campaign is taking a backseat to the other modes, and I'll explain a little bit more in detail when we get there. But it's such a... I really thought a lot about this game in terms of what it is and what it kind of represents in the overall franchise, I guess, because as I had said, it's the campaign taking a bit of a backseat to some of the other modes, which would have its own issues down the road, which we'll get to. But also, what people tend to remember and love about this game is the zombie modes. And I'm saying modes plural because Treyarch double, triple, maybe even quadruples down on the zombies because there are so many modes in this game relating to the zombies. And I think that's why people don't think about the campaign with this one at all. They just think purely about, zombies was great and all that stuff. And, we're in the middle of that, futuristic jetpack era, though there's really barely any jetpacking in this. There's quite a bit of parkouring in this game. But that's kind of about it. Yeah, like I guess it's like this jetpack jump pack trilogy. I think I had coined it prior. Like this is the second one in those. And Advanced Warfare was such a nice breath of fresh air for what the games were trying to do at that time, that Black Ops 3 in some ways feels like one step forward, two steps back, in that I think it's trying to keep up with some of the innovations that were kind of brought in the last couple games, trying to be different. But Treyarch didn't want to go too far because Black Ops had been working so well for them that they didn't want to completely alienate it. I mean, if you think about it, Treyarch would just make Black Ops games from here on out. Like, that's basically it. So, they struck while the iron was hot and have yet to do anything different from that, I guess. And yeah, looking at development on this game, there just really isn't that much. Other than I guess they kind of threw the campaign together near the very end, which honestly doesn't surprise me. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I mean, there was a little bit of controversy with this game, but it wasn't nothing that was too out of the ordinary or anything kind of crazy. This game, it feels like just another Call of Duty game in a lot of ways. It came out, sold really well, reviews were fairly high, probably higher than they should be, but that's a whole nother argument, I think. And yeah, there's just so many of these games that it just gets harder and harder for them to stick out, I guess. But yeah, let's take our first little music break, and then we'll get nice and deep into this campaign. So yeah, go grab a snack and a drink. It's going to be a long one. So the campaign for Black Ops 3, it, of course, follows up from Black Ops 2, and it's specifically in regards to the drone strikes that Menendez did at the end of that game. And here we're in the mid to late 2060s, where, technology is all over the battlefield, but not in the way Treyarch necessarily predicted, though I imagine some of this stuff could potentially happen. We're not in the 2060s yet. Jesus Christ. I want to be an old man by that time if I even make it. Anyway, the first mission for the game is just called Black Ops, and we are introduced to our player character, who is just called Player. Pretty much the whole time he's just called Player, which is he's not a playa, he's not a yeah boy kind of playa. He's just Player, I guess. And here we infiltrate a NRC airbase in Ethiopia to rescue the Egyptian Prime Minister known as Sayad. You are joined at first by a man named Jacob Hendricks, who becomes a very important character through the series, or through this game, I'm sorry. And when you rescue Sayad, he begs you to rescue his Lieutenant Khalil, which you do, albeit reluctantly, because it's not part of the mission. But eventually you rendezvous with this new Black Cyber Ops division. These soldiers who are very near robotic and have all kinds of implants and things in them. It's very similar to Advanced Warfare and how, they were just making these humanoid robotic type, almost like RoboCops in a weird way, right? And they're led by a man named John Taylor. who Hendrix seems to know from the dialogue that they share. This soon leads into bigger firefights. You get to use a machine gun and an APC, and you save these hostages from the NRC, and you're saving hostages from the NRC forces. After Khalil, there's a bunch of other ones that you have to take out. And the NRC forces, it turns into like you're fighting human and robot soldiers pretty much at the same time. And like right away, it reminded me of Gears of War 4, where quite a bit of that game you're fighting robots, and it is kind of a persistent thing through the rest of the game, fighting just machines, which is a little different, but it's okay. But as you are trying to escape, you get caught into a fist fight with a robot. There's a whole, like, you're extracting all the hostages and you're trying to get to the plane, but you get intercepted and a robot just starts like pummeling the fuck out of you. It is like brutal, or not like brutal. It is brutal. Just and you stay in first person the whole time, so you're witnessing this robot just punching the shit out of you, and eventually is like ripping off limbs of your body, like just like intense, like Mortal Kombat type stuff too. It's pretty insane, and it's kind of sets the tone for the rest of the game. The rest of the game is surprisingly graphic in a lot of this detail. But yeah, it does not end up well for you. You lose both of your arms, and as I said, you're nearly beaten to death. But Taylor ends up saving you at the very end. But that moves into the next mission called New World, where we awake on a train in Switzerland, where we're talking to Taylor as he's discussing your new robotic implants and this thing called the direct neural interface, which allows you to communicate with all of the other cyber ops. You meet a few others during these missions, including Sebastian Diaz and Sarah Hall, who become characters throughout the game. This mission is a simulation where you're in a coma recovering from surgery. The year is 2054, and this train was the victim of a terrorist attack, and you have to see if you can prevent this, unlike the Zurich security forces were unable to, because we're on a subway, or we're on a train in the middle of Zurich, Switzerland. And I describe it as this overly long training mission as you learning to wall run, remote hijack, throw swarms of remote drones, and even do a concussive slam on the ground to destroy robot forces. And yeah, it's all kind of neat and all well, designed, I guess. But yeah, this mission just seemed to go on, and it just didn't stop. It just felt a bit excessive at spots. But the mission ends with the train exploding anyway, as Taylor talks about how this was unpreventable, but he just wanted to see how far you were willing to go in order to prevent this. Kind of, I guess, testing your limits and seeing, what you're able to do and not do. So you end up waking up, and you find out that Hendrix is now also part of the Cyber Ops project, despite escaping the last mission. It was like a voluntary thing that Hendrix decided to sign up for. And the mission has a moment reminiscent of Black Ops 1, where the player has a PTSD moment when you're seeing the robots. So, like, you and Hendrix are kind of walking through, you're talking with Taylor, and then you see all these robots, right? And then your player, you get a weird PTSD moments that it reminded me of those, mental breakdown moments that you would have in Black Ops 1. And like it's cutting, like, very frenetically, kind of editing the part of the robot, ripping off your arms and everything. And I was hoping it would be a bit of a running motif throughout the game, him having like PTSD about the robots, and that it would kind of play into everything. But unfortunately, it really doesn't. This, if anything, just feels like just sort of like a little callback or a reference to that. But unfortunately, the campaign doesn't go on that route, but it goes in a different route that we'll get to. But from here, we move into the next mission called In Darkness. So you are tasked, along with Hendrix, to investigate a CIA station in Singapore that has recently blacked out. You come across a warlord enemy, which is a heavily armored cyborg that requires all your various new skills in order to take him down. And this part I found to be particularly annoying because the game was yelling at you to use the swarm, man, like the swarm of drones I had talked about, but either I didn't equip it or I didn't have it, because each mission in between, you're in this little hub section. So if you remember in Black Ops 2, it was almost like kind of like the lobby between missions where you'd see your description, you could choose your layout, like your weapon layout and all that kind of stuff before you did the mission. which is pretty cool. And here they up the ante by just having a small little hub you could just kind of roam around in. That still has all the same options, but also they bring like a multiplayer ranking and upgrade system into the campaign, where in between each mission you'll get experience points depending on certain like challenges you complete, like if you complete the mission without dying on a higher difficulty, you know, certain things like that to upgrade. And then when you upgrade, you get these specific points that you can spend to get unlock more abilities for your cyber ops, upgrade the previous ones you have, get new guns, skins, add-ons, that kind of stuff. Like, it feels very multiplayer heavy in the campaign, where you know you can customize your character, you can customize player in all kinds of different ways to sort of make it, you know, you can customize it to make the playthrough a bit more tailor-made for how you like to play Call of Duty, I guess. Like if you favor certain things over the other, which is okay, but it also in a way leads to the campaign just not feeling very campaign, which sounds weird, but when like what I like in the Call of Duty campaigns, and even in some other shooters, is when the single-player campaigns force you to use other weapons. Because it's so easy in these type of games to just, like, pick the assault rifle and just stick with that guy because those are, like, the best weapons, right? But if you think about the older ones where they would have those, but also they would give you shotguns, they would give you pistols, submachine, sniper, whatever, right? And for a while, you would just be kind of forced to use those. So it really gave you a nice sampling of all of the different guns and stuff that they have. And so turning it into this multiplayer thing, it in a way, it does let you kind of freely experiment with stuff, sure, but you have to use those points you get to unlock those guns. You don't just unlock guns as you go through the campaign. You have to, you know, spend those credits you earn to unlock them. So that kind of almost makes you go like, okay, this is the gun I'm going to use, and then I'm going to spend the points to get all the best add-ons and, you know, give myself the weird, like, lava magma, liquid hot magma fucking skin on it. So, which is, I mean, again, it's like, okay, but I don't know, it just feels like the campaign loses a little bit of that identity by just kind of allowing you to do all of that stuff. But that's kind of a long tangent to where this warlord enemy took me forever because I didn't know really how to take him down, and Hendrix kept wanting me to use the swarm, but I just couldn't find the swarm, and I think it was just something you unlock later. So what I ended up doing was, because the warlord isn't a robot, it's just like a human with robotic type armor. So what I did was I found a way to like shut down that robotic armor and then just, you know, plug him with bullets. Like, you can't throw grenades at him or even, like, you know, shoot like rocket launcher or whatever. Like, somehow he can take that damage, but if I stun him and just plug him full of bullets, that seemed to kill him. I don't know, it was kind of weird, but anyways, you take him down, and then you're joined later by CIA agent Rachel Kane, and you continue to fight your way through waves of enemies and even heavier weather conditions early on, like high winds and rising water. There are parts where you have this like kind of anchor thing that you put to the ground, so when the waves or the wind gets really high, you kind of like plant yourself. It's like a stake almost, like when you're rock climbing or something. So when you drive that stake in, you know, you can't move around. Again, it's a neat thing, but you know, it's not something that really, it doesn't really do much later on. Like, there's not like a later portion of the game where you're having to like lay the stake down and you're engaged in like heavy fire or anything like that. It's just a little thing they threw in where it's like, isn't that neat? And it's like, yeah, but I kind of wish they had done more with it. But I think at this point, the kind of core Call of Duty gameplay, they're not really wanting to fuck with too much, because I think they're afraid of like alienating people at this point. You know, like they'll throw little gimmicks in there here and there for a mission or two, but they don't extend beyond that. You know what I mean? So just another little nitpick, I guess. But you finish your sweep, you head to the site, you find it completely rubbled and broken down. But going in, they kill the last cavalry of 54I, who attempt to break into the site and enter the room. You find various agents dead with stabbed eyes, sliced ears, and the like. You manage to download everything from the site, but are wondering who did this to these people. Kane suggests Taylor's team, since they were there last, but you and Hendricks deny it as the mission ends. And 54I, I forgot to mention, are known as the 54 Immortals, who is a faction that's in this game and is pretty much like the main adversarial force that you will be fighting against throughout the majority of the game. Which leads into our next mission, which is called Provocation. So in order to find out the truth, Hendricks sets up a meeting with a Singaporean drug dealer, but things go south when you realize that he's working for the 54 Immortals. So a big firefight ensues, which kills the drug dealer, and then one of his friends named Go Min, as his sibling Go Julan, flees. I hope I'm saying that right. And so you're now tasked with chasing after her. And you get some robots on your side this time, which is pretty cool. And you get to catch up with Julan eventually. And in order to access the files that you need, it requires some DNA encryption, which is what Julan has. So Hendricks, it's either Hendricks or you, I forget which one specifically, cuts off her fucking hand, the entire hand, and then uses that in order to access the files. Again, as I'd mentioned earlier, this game is just strangely, like, overtly brutal, like in a way that, like, Spec Ops: The Line was trying to parody, but this way it's like doing it for real. It's very weird. But you access the files, and those files confirm that Taylor and his team have gone rogue, much to Hendricks' dismay. And then a good chunk of the rest of the game is sort of focused on his emotional arc and trying to deal with this sudden understanding that Taylor is the one committing all of this. And his emotional journey is, as I said, like the main kind of arc throughout the whole story. And I put in my notes, the game to me feels like the same plot as Advanced Warfare, but speeding through the plot points very quickly. And at this point in the game, it definitely feels like that, because Advanced Warfare also deals with, like, betrayal and, you know, people going rogue and having beliefs that you weren't aware of. But as we find out as we progress through the game, it definitely goes in a different direction. I think this game wanted to go in that route, but as they probably saw what was going on with Advanced Warfare, they had to kind of change it up a little bit to not make it an exact copy. So I understand why I would think this at that time, but trust me, it does not stay that way. But we hit the next mission called Hypocenter. Here we arrive at an abandoned coalescence facility where 300,000 people died due to a Corvus explosion, and the entire facility is completely, like, you know, bombed out. It looks like in the later Jurassic Park movies where they would go back to the island and everything is just kind of like there's vegetation crawling all over the buildings, there's broken glass and everything. It just had that kind of feeling to it. And it's very dark, and it's actually, like, kind of spooky. Like, the sort of tension that you get as you're going, like, deeper and deeper into the facilities is very well done, because you start on the top, on the surface level, and then as you go in, you have to go down, like, floors consistently, and, you know, just, like, less light, less illumination, less kind of view from the top, and you keep running into enemies and, you know, humans and robot enemies as you're progressing, and then eventually you lose your escort drone, which kind of, again, adds to that that tension. Then, and the closer to the bottom you get, you run into what they think are corrupted robots, where they start, like, just charging at you, and they're getting very aggressive. I said in, like, a zombie-like way, and yeah, like, the more kind of aggressive 28 Days Later type zombie kind of way. But you find out later on that Diaz is actually controlling them. He's in this weird core, this, like, central core, controlling the robots, and he's trying to upload some sensitive data worldwide to kind of leak the whole cyber ops thing, because he's part of Taylor's team that has just, you know, completely gone rogue. And so you and Hendricks are trying to stop him, and you're able to by you engage in a little bit of a boss fight here, where you have to shoot all the various cooling cores and then throw grenades into them while you're kind of fending off these very aggressive kind of robots, which Ends up working. You do kill Diaz, and then you have to make a very dramatic escape, finding back more robots and 54 immortals as you render the facility underwater to help cover your exit. And and at this point, I realized that, these levels are really long, because this whole sequence, which I think is one of the better missions in the entire game, is like 20 to 30 minutes. This whole back and forth thing, it might have even been longer. It kind of surprised me how long this mission was, and kind of in a way this whole campaign. It took me, honestly, probably longer to beat this than any other Call of Duty campaign up to this point, which was something I noticed and I thought was rather interesting, which does kind of lead into some fatigue near the end of the game. But right here, it was something I noticed. But regardless, I think Hypo Center was a very well done level, so I quite enjoyed that. And then we move into the next mission, which is called Vengeance. Despite taking out Diaz, he was still able to leak that information out to the world, and one of the things he leaked was Rachel Kane's location at the safe house. So because of that, the 54 Immortals are swarming in on her, and this mission, we have to go and save her. She doesn't want you to save her. She views herself as just kind of expendable, but player especially is just like, we got to do it anyways. I feel like they attempt a slight romantic angle with the two of them, but it comes off a little forced. But anyway, so we head back to Singapore to go and save her, and it is in complete ruins. It's burning down. They're just innocent civilians everywhere. Like, some are basically tied up getting shot. Some are hanging from street poles. My second Spec Ops The Line reference today, where, again, it just feels very much like that, exposing kind of that brutality. I wouldn't be surprised if Treyarch and maybe even Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer played Spec Ops, and I don't know if necessarily taking the wrong lessons from that game is the right term, because I think how good Spec Ops The Line does kind of hang on the idea that you realize what the game is trying to say. You know what I mean? Like, and like, if you view it as just another shooter, you can view it as that kind of and just be fine. But if you view it more in kind of that Apocalypse Now fashion, it is really where the message of that game hits. And I don't know, maybe Treyarch just saw that iconography throughout the game and was like, oh, that's cool, let's just do that. Anyways, but again, it's just brutal everywhere. There are times where you can even attempt to save people, but they die anyways. Again, reading my notes. And that was something that was really annoying, because, you'll see certain hostages tied up, and it's like, oh, I want to, see if I can save them. And if you shoot one of the 54 to kind of save them, they end up, like, dying anyways. Like, somehow they're able to fire their pistol at the exact same time they get shot in the head or something. It feels unnecessary, in my opinion. Like, guys, what are we doing here? And nobody bitched about this, as far as I could tell. Like, reading into any sort of controversies about the game, none of this was there. Maybe it's because they weren't white people this time. But anyways, as you're approaching Kane's safe house, Hendricks and the player are arguing the whole time about, if she's, like, compromised or not. Is she luring you guys into a trap? Is she secretly rogue with Taylor? All this kind of stuff, which in a way makes sense, even though it also kind of doesn't, because she's telling you to not, but you're still going anyways. And Hendricks is kind of doubting, sort of wondering if you're compromised or not, because he can tell you, may have some feelings for her, and that's rubbing him the wrong way. Maybe he secretly has a crush on you. I don't know. But also at the same time, Hendricks is still doubting if Taylor was justified in what he did. Trying to, in those stages of grief, doing, like, the bargaining kind of thing. But during the mission, Taylor even hacks into your comms to try to justify the acts. So it kind of adds that extra note into it. Considering he has connection to you via the direct neural stuff from earlier. I'm surprised he doesn't do this more, which is an interesting thing to think about. Like, why doesn't he just hack into your stuff and like try to get you guys on his side? That's one thing I think the game never really addresses, is why was Player and Hendrix kind of left out in the cold of all of this while they were, doing their thing. It's kind of like in Advanced Warfare, how you don't really get a choice to side with who you want to. You're just kind of assumed to be on one side or the other, which, again, is just kind of strange. And I feel like this game kind of glosses over that and that little idea, I guess. But as you progress, you find out that Go Zulan has taken Kane hostage. She didn't die, but she's very pissed at you. Gee, I wonder why. But you manage to get to the safe house, undeterred by an explosion, and save Kane, all while burning Zulan's face while holding her head to the flame. Again, like some brutal shit. Like, you get into a bit of a kerfuffle with her, and because, there's an explosion and there's fire everywhere, you just, like, shove her head into the fire and just kind of burn her head. It doesn't kill her, but it's like, guys, why... is it weird that I'm talking about how excessively brutal this game is? Is that weird? Because the whole time I was playing it, I just couldn't get that out of my head. That it felt like Treyarch just really wanted to go for it here. And while they have done this before with, like, World at War and that, World at War was just trying to show the intense horrors of a real-life war that actually happened. Like, there's documentation on the horrors of the Japanese front of World War II, and even the Western front in Europe. So for them to kind of go this far with a futuristic fictional war, it just feels like they're trying to, like, I guess, outdo themselves and, I guess, fulfill the sort of, like, bloodthirsty expectations of the fan base, I guess. I mean, in a way I could understand, but I don't know. Just something about it just is just really off-putting to me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I need to think about this. I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Okay, I think I needed some time to just, like, calm down. I was having a weird crisis over excessive video game violence. Am I just getting older? I don't know. It was very weird. But let's move on, shall we, to the next mission called Rise and Fall. See, I rose and now I fell. Okay, everything's all great now. So after escaping Singapore, the team heads up to Egypt to interrogate Dr. Yusuf Salim, who tells him that Taylor and the team will kill him unless he reveals what he knows about the project and of the frozen forest, wanting to know why they are so obsessed with it. So Salim admits that he had worked on the secret project involving illegal D&I experiments on humans, and that his job was to comfort the emotionally unstable test subjects, using the fictional frozen forest as a way to keep the subjects calm. Becoming more aggressive, Hendrix violently demands why Taylor and his team are obsessed with the frozen forest, but is interrupted by a sudden explosion. Learning that the NRC are attacking, the team assists Khalil and his forces in repelling this attack. Using the assault as a way to distract the team, Taylor and his squad then capture Dr. Salim, although the player is able to track him using a small tracking chip that they'd slipped on Salim earlier. Very clever. Angered over not knowing about the tracker, Hendrix punches Taylor hard across the face, accusing them of keeping secrets from him along with Kane. Because, Hendrix is still kind of like flipping out over everything, and then he feels like the only reason we saved Kane earlier was because Player has like the hots for her, all that kind of stuff. But Player then explains that something is clearly wrong with Hendrix since leaving Singapore, and that they made the call not to tell Hendrix about it because they thought he would sabotage the mission, because clearly Hendrix is not in the right state of mind. But feeling remorse against striking his friend, Hendrix then decides to help you back up, admitting that he shouldn't have taken his feelings about the mission out on the player, but tells him that everything about it feels wrong. And yeah, it's definitely, they're definitely trying to push this whole Hendrix thing, but I don't know. Anyway, we'll keep going as I explain further. The next level, it's called Demon Within, and it sees us, of course, following Salim's said tracker. You get ambushed by a manticore, or a titan. That's really what he looks like, but they call him a manticore. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, anybody? Anyways, it's being piloted by Sarah Hall. So after a quick fight with her and a rocket launcher, you DNI hack into her in order to figure out what is going on, and what she and Taylor know that we don't. So we find ourselves in her mind, and this is really where the game takes a very interesting left turn, because earlier in the game, when we did the DNI stuff with the Zurich train mission, it was sort of like a training thing that was taking place inside your mind. Taking place inside your mind. It was like a quiet burp. I guess I didn't think about it at the time, but it's we're going to go into other people's minds and see what the hell's going on in there. And yeah, we now enter Sarah's mind. And oh boy, it's a doozy, because now we are in a World War II battle fighting Nazis, but with real, using the guns that we're using now, futuristic guns, and we're shooting World War II Nazis, not zombies, just regular old Nazis, and running through some of that. There might be a slight nod or two throughout this to the earlier games. I noticed a Private Miller as one of your allies, which is a reference to one of the earlier games. And all the while, we are following Sarah as she's floating through the air, looking like the cover of the original Xbox game Advent Rising. Go look that cover up, and yeah. And it's this very strange left turn. And I remember playing this just being very confused, because on the one hand, it's it's nice to kind of see World War II again. It had been a while. But it was and they justify it by her talking about how obsessed she is with World War II history. And World War II history. Why am I? I'm getting sleepy just thinking about it. Yeah, but it's her how they justify it by having her talk about how much she really enjoys World War II history. Read about it and everything. And I mean, I guess it just feels like it's meant to be a bit of a callback to the earlier ones, which is cute, but I don't know. The true World War II callback to Call of Duty will come in due time. We still have a couple more games to go. But anyways, you find out what happened in Singapore, claiming Zhe Jiang killed the staff of the Black Stallion. That claim that Zhe Jiang killed the staff of the Black Stallion, it was false, and it was Taylor and his team, to which Hall confesses, because that's what you're trying to get out of Sarah, is that hey, did you guys actually do this? And then she confesses to doing it. But you also find out that Dr. Salim was killed by Taylor after learning about the frozen forest, and a guy named Sebastian Druger being responsible for the disaster. You then find yourself in a house fighting off various zombies as a representation of Hall's dying brain. Yeah, you get trapped into this house as it's being burned alive, and you just do a mini zombies round for some reason, and then you see her kind of attached to a tree, and she's she's begging you to kill her, because earlier when they talked about the DNI stuff, they were most people don't come out of these DNI neural links like this alive, and she's begging you to kill her in order to set her free, and then you're hearing this voice called Corvus, which is it's a weird deep voice or whatever, trying to almost be the devil on your shoulder a little bit. But you keep fighting off the zombies until eventually you are able to actually, Hall does die through all of this, and then once you come out of the neural link, you relay everything to Kane as the mission fades. But now it's time to play in a sandcastle, kids, as your squad launches an attack at the aquifer where Taylor and Moretti are being held. You start the mission in a fighter jet with a mixture of rail shooter segments, and then you get to hover around the base, shooting at various emplacements. You even land on it a few times in order to destroy their comms channels, which you do successfully. This is very similar to a mission, I believe it was in Black Ops 2, where it was the same kind of thing, where you're in like a hover jet, and you're just shooting a bunch of shit, and then you land on it and all that. But you keep landing and then going back into your jet like a handful of times. It's the pacing is a little funky, in my opinion. But eventually you land on the thing to actually go catch them, but as you're swimming into the lower level, Corvus starts to talk to you, and he even tries to drown you, which Kane prevents. Like he somehow is just like gaining control of your brain in order to try to like sacrifice you. But she shows that you are actually infected. So Corvus is like this like weird computer virus thing. Anyway, Taylor and Moretti knew what you were doing the whole time, and they set up an ambush, which causes you to flee and regroup. But as you and Hendricks try to catch Moretti as Taylor escapes, Hendricks gets very aggressive and gets punched by the player for being out of line. You find Moretti, and after trying to convince him to give up, he won't, and it results in his death, impaled on a steel rod. Hendricks tells the player that they put Moretti down like an animal, reminding them that he was one of their own, just as Hull and Diaz, and questions if Taylor's next. After another violent argument, the two of you have to make a daring escape before the aquifer is completely demolished. Yeah, and at this point, Hendricks is just really getting it on your case about all of this stuff, and just kind of, like, again, being a dick. I wonder if it's related to potentially the that Corvus stuff. But we'll figure that later, as we are heading into the penultimate mission called the Lotus Towers. And we are in, well, the Lotus Towers. This is in order to dethrone the NRC general and cause a civilian Cairo uprising, which we actually do. We end up sneaking behind their general, Hakim, as he's making a big speech, and we just chuck him off the fucking balcony. It was actually kind of cool, I'm not going to lie. But meanwhile, we are still looking for Taylor. And when we catch up to him, he is sicking all of the robots on us because he's, gained control of them. And they're just mad dashing us again like before. So later on, we actually catch up to him again, and we try to plead with him as he boards his giant mothership in order to initiate a boss fight. Like a rare instance of a Call of Duty boss fight. So we have to, grab a rocket launcher and just take down his big old ship, which we do. We are still trying to plead with Taylor, saying, like, why the hell are you doing this? You don't need to do this. Taylor even has a little bit of moment of clarity and even rips the DNI out of his skull in order to get rid of Corvus, because, as I had said before, Corvus is basically just like a weird computer virus that has infected everybody, or is infecting people within the DNI. But the moment doesn't last long, as Hendricks ends up shooting Taylor in the head. He steals the mothership and leaves, asking you about the frozen forest, just like Taylor and the other troops had did. At this point, Hendricks is heading to Switzerland in order to kill Sebastian Kruger, who had actually created Corvus, but of course we intend to stop him, even to Kane's dismay and fear. She even, mentions that the Corvus has just completely infected Hendricks, which is why he's acting the way that he is. But we get now to the final mission called Life. So we are now obviously in Zurich. Hendricks has taken over the robots in order to cause mass destruction everywhere. And you are joined by Kane in order to fight through them to get to the Coalescence Corporation, which is where the creator of Corvus and Hendricks are. And even though Kane had said she wouldn't go with you and was trying to stop you, she ends up going anyways, but because I guess she's caught the feels for you, just like you have with her. And it actually leads to a scene in the lab where you find Nova 6, the chemical compound that had been a plot point back in Black Ops 1, if you guys remember. And Kane sacrifices herself to stop it from leaking, but is killed by Corvus after he had faked the whole readings. And yeah, they tried to really lay in this kind of melodramatic moment with Player and Kane, trying to imply that there was something there, but again, they didn't do really any work to sort of suggest that any of this was happening. It was just, it kind of got brought up, and then they just ended up rolling with it because it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Sure, why not? Love can be found anywhere on the battlefield, right? We played that game. We played that game. So, anyways, we later on find Hendrix, who's interrogating Kruger about the frozen forest, which leads to both of their deaths. But with nothing else, player executes himself just like he said he would because he had failed to stop any of this. But we are now taken to the frozen forest, where we see where Corvus is trying to convince you to stay, seeing as you are the only living host of him, and he's even like using representations of Hendrix, saying like, "Hey, I'm all good," that kind of stuff, trying to fake you out, giving you a false sense of security. And you reject all of this, which causes waves of enemies to be sent your way. And then later on, we actually find a sort of humanoid representation of Corvus. It looked a little Dr. Manhattan-esque to me, interrogating Kruger to know about his own true purpose. And I remember when this moment happened, I took a screenshot of it because at this point it feels like we're not in a Call of Duty game anymore. We are in like a weird Mortal Kombat DLC because Kruger is like strapped to like a bunch of trees, like pinned to it, right? While you have this weird ghostly AI virus thing interrogating him about his true purpose in the middle of this frozen forest, which is a computerized representation of like a weird combination of a happy place and purgatory. Yeah, I don't get it either. So Corvus's entire purpose was to just mass surveillance everybody as a way to keep people in line. Kruger tells Corvus that he was just a mistake in the programming. So, yeah, so like DNI, I guess, is supposed to be a representation of the whole concept of putting a microchip in every human being. I think it's sort of a version of that, the idea that, you can put... Well, we'll put microchips in people the way we put microchips in like dogs or whatever, but that's never really been something that people want to do. And also, we don't have to do that because we're all tied to these fucking phone things instead, right? So it would be a waste of time. But anyways, Corvus gets really mad, and this causes him to murder Kruger, and I described a very Mortal Kombat-like way. It kind of looked like a stage fatality. But shortly after, we are reunited with Taylor, who's the only other person who has resisted Corvus's influence, particularly at the very end. And so he joins you through this, final battle where you fight through various scenarios that are constructed from Taylor's memory, bringing them back to the reality where player finally initiates a manual purge of the DNI. So as you're doing all this, you are going back into some levels from the game that we had just played, slightly different, and each time you find like a giant heart, like a giant beating heart that just reminded me of like Mother Brain, and both times you have to tear down the like the control panel that's attached to it, again, trying to do this manual purge of the DNI. And it completely eradicates Corvus. Like at this point, I'm like, are we even playing a fucking Call of Duty game? Like, this shit is like really, really kind of gone off the deep end. I feel like Treyarch thought they were cooking, but I don't think they were cooking. I think they were burning the kitchen, setting off the fire alarm at this point. And yeah. But anyways, you get through all of that. You destroy the hearts, you rip the DNI out, everything's all good. You emerge back in to like the real world as you see the ZSF forces arriving. They're checking on you, making sure you're okay. They ask you what your name is, and you say your name is John Taylor. And the credits roll. So why, unless I missed something, I don't see why we're now John Taylor, unless it's because like our player character wasn't really a representation of anything. I really don't. I don't know. But that's the campaign, and gameplay wise, it's Call of Duty like normal. But this story was really batshit, and not in like a fun way, just in a very convoluted, they're trying way too hard to outdo themselves previously kind of way. And I just... there's a reason people don't really remember this game for the campaign. It just... I don't know, guys. I need to think about this. So we're going to take one final music break, and then when I come back, we will round up talking about multiplayer, zombies, all the other various modes, and we will call this an episode. So I'll be right back. So the multiplayer, it kind of builds off of Advanced Warfare, where, we have like the wall run, the power slide, boosting. And thinking back in the campaign, we have that a little bit, but we don't really use it that much. Like the wall running is useful, the power slide, but like the boost jump, you only have it for like a mission or two, and then it's just like gone. But here it's in full force, and yeah, it just kind of, builds off of what we've had with Advanced Warfare. There's now some swimming and underwater shooting in there, which is okay. And from what I had played of the multiplayer, I thought the maps were, they were solid. They were pretty all right. I think Treyarch's multiplayer, or at least in their games, has been fairly consistent, but, it's kind of hard to top what they had done with 1 and 2. But they do a good job of keeping it kind of consistently solid. We get the pick 10 system again, which is where you get 10 points to, basically build out, your loadout for guns and perks and everything, and like wild cards and all that kind of stuff. And I like that system, and I think most people do, because it allows a lot of, freedom that you have. But obviously it doesn't include like score streaks and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the multiplayer, I think overall it's fine. It's all right. Again, I thought the maps were okay. It was nothing spectacular, but it gets harder to kind of comment on the Call of Duty multiplayer, because if you didn't play it when it was like new or lively, it's you play it for a bit and you just go okay, and then that was kind of it. You don't kind of ride the journey with other people. You just kind of are peeking in. It's like popping your head into like a party when it's about near the end. You missed all the cool stuff. And kind of speaking of that, it kind of goes into the zombies. Now, the zombies is what people know and love from Black Ops 3. That's all people would ever talk about is the zombie modes. And I played a little bit of one of the maps you get, because again, it was mostly DLC, and I'm not willing to spend the money on the on the DLC for that. I did a little bit of the Shadows of Evil, which is it takes place in like a fictional 1940s city, and I get the sense that like the zombies mode, like it has its own sort of like legs to it in terms of like lore and story and everything like that. Yeah, which is cool. It's cool that it's there, and the little bit I played of it, it was good, and I imagine if you were there at the time, this zombies mode was kind of the peak in a lot of ways. And I feel like Treyarch understood the peak of zombies in this era because they bring back the Dead Ops arcade from Black Ops 1, which I loved. It was the top-down arcade shooter thing. They bring it back in Dead Ops Arcade 2, Cyber's Avengening. Love that title. And it's more of the same. It's really cool. There's one thing about it that should be cool, but it's really not. And you can unlock like an upgrade as you're playing to where it switches from the top down to a first person mode. So you can just play it kind of like normal for a little bit. And yeah, like on paper, that sounds really cool. They even like modeled the guns that you play in the arcade mode, which are not available anywhere else for that, but you realize that, but they made this to be like a top down shooter. So you can very easily get blindsided from other zombies and die. Which, yeah, is like kind of the fatal flaw with that thing. It's like if you're trying to play like Smash TV, but you're playing it as like a first-person shooter. It's like, no. Like, you get the idea. Like, conceptually it sounds cool, but then it's, the game design doesn't really lend itself to that viewpoint, so it just kind of makes it whatever. And then to top off the zombie stuff, when you beat the campaign, you unlock a new campaign. I don't have the title of it immediately on me, but it's in like the bonus stuff in Black Ops 3, and you replay the entire campaign, but it's zombies, like the entire thing. It's very ambitious. I believe it's called Nightmares. Let me just checking. Yeah, Nightmares. And it has like a slightly different story involving different character. Like Hendrix is still there, but you're not. But like, and you're still player, but you're not player from the campaign. You're instead a new player basically, and they just sort of like monologue in each level about stuff that's going on, and then you just play the maps, the campaign maps, but as zombies, like, and you're still doing the same like the same mission structures and everything like that. It's like slightly different, slightly the same, and you only get one gun, and they have the chests and everything. So if you've played zombies before, if you know how the setup is, it's that, but in the campaign. I played a couple of levels of it. It was cool. It didn't really keep my interest to go the whole way, because as I kept playing, I was like, yeah, this is just kind of more of the same. It's not like drastically different in terms of the story or missions or anything. They just jumble around the levels in the campaign that sorry, that was a weak one. The campaign missions that you've already done. So again, it's just a little bonus, just kind of thrown in at the end if you just want to fuck around with it. And I did, and it was cool. And that kind of puts the cap on Black Ops 3, a kind of a bizarre entry in the series. A game that I feel like it doesn't really know what it wants to do. Like, it's not fully committing to any sort of ideas, I guess. And being in the middle of the Jetpack trilogy, it just kind of falls into this. They want to evolve the series, and when they go really far, it feels like they're kind of losing what made the series work in the first place. And the deeper I get into this part of the series, I can understand why there was such a call to return to the more traditional, boots on the ground stuff, which we would get in the future, but we're not there yet. We still have to wade through the waters of this weird futuristic stuff. So, yeah, that's going to be this episode. Thank you all so much for listening. This is the 14th episode of this, and we're a little over halfway through now. So, hopefully we can knock all of these out before we get to the most recent Call of Duty coming out this year at the time of recording in Modern Warfare 4. Hopefully I can get to it in December, but we shall see. So once again, guys, make sure you like, comment, 5-star rate, share, follow, subscribe, love, I don't know, give me a kissy poo, I don't know. Whatever people do on social media these days to show their appreciation for for the show. My social media links are in the description, so be sure to follow me there for, updates on the show and other things I'm working on. And make sure to listen to more shows within the SuperPod network, which this podcast is a part of. It's a great set of shows. Other ones that say I co-host, or ones that I've made numerous guest appearances on. So feel free to give all of them a bunch of love and tell them Daddy Thrax sent you. So until next time not Infinity War, not that, you dumbass. The next one, it's Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. That's what it is. So until Infinite Warfare, bye-bye.